Isocrates, who lived from 436 to 338 BCE, was born to a wealthy Athenian family during the Peloponnesian War. He saw the destructive outcome of the several decades of long conflict, including the humiliating defeat of his homeland, the dismantling of its empire, and its lowest ebb during the later social wars. He received a first-class education, including from the sophists Prodicus and Gorgias, whom were both participants in the dialogues of Plato. However, the destruction of his family fortunes during the Peloponnesian War saw Isocrates being forced to earn a living. Although himself not a confident public speaker, Isocrates made a living initially as a courtroom speechwriter, writing legal speeches for defendants and prosecutors who had to carry out their own case under Athenian legal system. Following success in his speechwriting, Isocrates founded a school for his rhetoric around 392 BCE, prior to the founding of the Platonic Academy. Attracting great acclaim with his written works and having several pupils who were able to go on to become famous philosophers and politicians, he was able to charge high fees and amass a small fortune. However, Isocrates was a rival of the contemporaneous Plato, who saw his teaching as that of the sophists, noting that his education was under Prodicus and Gorgias. This reputation led to later thinkers, who were primarily Platonic, to vilify Isocrates as a sellsword wordsmith, willing to lend his silver tongue to all comers. This reputation for sophistry seems to be somewhat unearned, with Isocrates himself positioning himself in opposition to sophists. In one of his works, Isocrates places his craft, being rhetoric, in opposition to the sophists, who he defines as those who taught political debate techniques, and the eristics, who disputed around theory and ethics. Instead, Isocrates put forward rhetoric as the art of persuasion, bringing the populace and leaders over to the right opinion. Isocrates didn't necessarily think everyone was suited to rhetoric, saying that it required the right combination of innate talent, knowledge, and practice, a skill which could be honed but not above its natural potential. In this argument, we see a potential ally in the most unlikely of places, Plato. In his dialogue The Gorgias, Plato, through Socrates, appears to be insinuating that rhetoric as a skill has a purpose to convince the many of the beauty and goodness of philosophy and its prescriptions. The worldview which Isocrates promoted using this rhetoric was both simultaneously conservative and revolutionary. He was distrustful of democracy, having lived through the Peloponnesian War and coming from an upper-class family. At the end of the social war, a conflict which pitted the lower and upper strata of Athenian society and brought the already war-ravaged city to its knees, he recommended a return to the aristocratic institutions of the pre-democratic reforms, limiting power to those who were of the right stock. However, Isocrates was also a proponent of Panhellenism, who thought that Greeks should band together and stand against the barbarians, namely the Persians. He sent letters to Sparta, Syracuse, and finally Philip of Macedon, trying to find a military leader who would bring this pan-Hellenic world into being. With Philip the Great, he found his warrior, but the rise of Macedon saw the enslavement of Greece, and with this bitter disappointment, Isocrates is said to have starved himself to death. This conquest also saw Greek culture and language become standard throughout West Asia and the Eastern Mediterranean, as his Philip and then his son Alexander the Great conquered the so-called known world. In this sense, we can see Isocrates not only as an important orator, stylist and politician, but also as a prophet of the Hellenic world which had come to define the Greco aspect of Greco-Roman culture.